Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brightball's webinar. Let's just give a couple of minutes for all the attendees to log on and join us, and we will begin very, very shortly. This is a very, very exciting webinar, simply because there's a lot of pain around PPC for events. And I am pretty excited to be running this webinar today because it's just packed with a lot of really, really valuable information. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them through the Q&A panel. We were going to put these questions down to us towards the end of the session. We really aim to leave around 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes for questions and answers. And if there are any specific questions, I will make sure that we personally get back to you individually, answering any particular question that you might have. So welcome. We're going to then welcome to our webinar on PPC for events. Just a quick introduction for those of you that don't know me. My name is Ricardo Molina, and I am the director of Brightball. We are an inbound marketing agency with a specific specialization in the sector of events, media, and membership organizations, as well as B2B. But everything that has to do with events is our particular area of expertise. With us, we have Laura Davidson, the director and co-founder of a really, really, really cool agency called Tag Digital. That is pretty much the conversation of all the event organizers around PPC for events. They are super experts in this particular field and are also specializing on lane events. So I'm pretty excited to welcome Laura with us. I think she's going to be with us very shortly, and I just really wanted to give you kind of a little bit of a background as to why we're doing this. So the event marketeer situation is as follows, based on the conversations that I had with people. A lot of marketeers or marketing departments are struggling to drive new attendees to their events. Senior management always wants to grow their events. They want to use the same database. They're not devoting any budget to anything else, but they still want to grow. There's also a feeling that there's not enough information around PPC for events about what works, what doesn't, what are the benchmarks, which are the channels that you could use. Everyone says, oh, we shouldn't use Facebook. A lot of people say, no, we should Facebook. And so all these things that like people just don't really know, we're aiming to demystify here. And also very important, where do we begin? If you're going to start on PPC, where do you start? How much do you invest? And even for those organizations, those people that do invest in PPC and use PPC as a main channel to market their events, they find it difficult to demonstrate if it works or not. So that's the key aspect that we're going to do, that we're going to cover today. Before we really begin, I wanted to ask a couple of questions to the audience. And I want to be able to understand, for the people that are attending, so do you know how much it costs you to generate a lead, an attendee, or a visitor, which is, in essence, when you do PPC, you know, it's going to cost you a certain amount of money. How much of that do you know, how much it costs you? And the second answer, do you currently invest in PPC? Let's try to get all the answers, hopefully. So half of you already voted. Let's leave the poll. So do you know how much do you pay? Every time you get a lead, every time you get an attendee, do you know how much it costs you? And this is not about how much it costs you per click. It's not the £1, it's not the 50 pence, it's not the £2 that you normally pay for every click. It's once someone registers to your event, how much it would have cost you in that. Interestingly enough, 62% of people do not know. Wow. Okay, and around half of our audience currently does not invest in PPC currently. Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to share the results. And with that, I want to introduce you to Laura.
We're really happy to do that because it gives our clients benchmarks to work with and help you guys too. So it will probably take us around half an hour to get through our slides today. And then we'll have about 15 minutes for questions. So yeah, if we want to start with what the organisers want. So as a company, we only work with event organisers and publishers. All of our organisers tend to want the same thing. So regardless of what sector they're in, they're looking for new data. So we want to be growing the pool of your attendees, your conference delegates, your exhibitors. We want to be bringing you new data. We want quality data. So we want the exhibitors to be happy. We want you to be bringing in, visitors from new sectors, challenging sectors, international areas. For free events, there's a big focus on attendance. So we know that for our free events, we've maybe only got 50% of those roughly that are going to attend. So what we want to drive is quality data to make sure that those users actually show up to the show. It's really common for us to have a focus on key or challenging areas. So for a launch show or launch conference, for different international targets or specific sectors that you might be struggling with. Organisers want really targeted campaigns based on our audience. So if you have a security event and you have 10 different sectors you're trying to target, we want to make sure that we've got tailored campaigns for each one of those audiences. Some of you might be new to PPC, you might be running this yourself, you might be running it through an agency, but real ease of understanding what worked and what didn't. And part of that's understanding all the reporting. There's lots of acronyms in PPC, and we want to make sure that's really clear for our clients and support people through that process. So we specialise in PPC for events, and it's quite a different sector. So there's lots of agencies might specialise in retail or hospitality or e-commerce, but really what we're looking for is event organisers and how do they work, because PPC acts quite differently for event organisers. One of the first things is there's an end date. So it's really common, with retailers, they have a monthly budget, they spend every month. But with PPC for events, we're all working towards that end date, and that's generally the end of the campaign. 50 to 60% of the budget is spent in the final 2 to 3 weeks. And we work on lots of conferences, up to $5,000 would probably be your most expensive conference, and you still get people booking a couple of weeks out from that. We spend the budget in a curved way, and I'd recommend that's what you do is you start out small, you test what's working, and then you really amplify the budget when you know that that's starting to convert. We know that the people that register in the final 2 weeks are most likely to actually come to the event. So this is when we want to spend the money. We get the best registrations and we get the best shot of attendance. Obviously, if there's any financial element to the conference or consumer event, then they're going to come. Even if they've spent £10 on a ticket, they're most likely to attend. 50% of people who register for free events won't show up. We do know with PPC that that's generally higher. We get around 61% attendance. But we want to remarket to the people who registered to encourage them to actually show up. And for paid events, so for conferences, we want to ensure that we've got the correct timing to match the budget with percentage of bookings. If you've got early bird, if you've got pricing discounts, we want to make sure that we've got enough budget running at those times to get the people who are ready to book on the early bird. So we've said today PPC for events, but what does that actually mean? What can that actually deliver? So what conversions, and when we talk about a conversion, this is something that's a definite thing that happens. So we're not looking at page views, we're not looking at visit to the contact page, we're looking at people that pre-registered, so they filled in a form. Or for exhibitors, we're looking for people who filled in, inquire about a stand. Same for sponsors, awards entries, we want a completed entry, same for book a table. New data, we want to make sure, they've downloaded the content or they've viewed the video, you've got their email or their cookie to make sure that we've captured that as a conversion. For subscriptions, we want a completed subscription. So we want to make sure that the person has actually bought the publication or they've signed up to the platform. Same for content downloads, it's a definite thing. Delegates, we're looking for completed payments and completed form fills for lead generation, and consumer ticket sales is a completion. So that's what we count as an acquisition. So everything that we're doing in PPC, you're paying for a click. So, you know, some people will say, oh, PPC is AdWords and it's search. Yes, it is, but it's also paid social, it's paid video, it's remarketing, it's display, all of these things you pay for a click. So we class it under the one umbrella. And ultimately what we're trying to answer as a question is, for all of these different channels, how much is it costing us to acquire any of those conversions? So one visitor, one attendee, one exhibitor, one delegate, how much does it cost us? Because ultimately that's what's making your event profitable or not. So how many clicks does it cost us to get one conversion? So say it costs us £1 a click, and we know that we convert 1 in every 10 clicks. That's going to give us a £10 cost per acquisition. Then you can work out, okay, what does that mean for all of my other overheads? Generally, PPC is a low cost to entry. It's going to be a low cost to acquisition. It's very easy to track. But what we want to know is, how does that fare for you? You're generally going to start small with PPC, deliver strong cost per acquisition, and then provided the traffic and the appetite is there, we would add more budget to that campaign. So let's really understand cost per acquisition. So cost per acquisition is how much is it costing us to acquire one registration, one sale, one lead, one download, one webinar. It's the most important factor when you're allocating your budget, projecting your results, delivering your results, or proving your return on investment. You need to know how much it costs you to get one person there to know how much you're making from that campaign. So when we're thinking about cost per acquisition, this varies massively, you know, from sector to sector, job title to job title, even all within events. We have, you know, we might pay a £2 cost per acquisition for a retail campaign, all the way up to £100 cost per acquisition for a financial conference. So what you want to be thinking about is, where in the funnel are you targeting? Search and social and remarketing tends to be cheaper to acquire. So if you're new to PPC, if you've not done much of it before, start with the things that are going to deliver a good cost per acquisition for you. So search, social, and retargeting is going to be your cheapest cost per acquisition. And then you're going to add display and video to the top of the funnel. It's more expensive, but it tends to be done for awareness. You know, if you've got a launch event, you need to reach a new sector in your region, you're going to have to grow that funnel. Think about, is your budget fixed? So the way that we like to work and the way we recommend to clients to work is test your campaign with a small budget. You know, start out with £1,000, £2,000, something like that. If that budget is going well and you're delivering, you know, registrations at £5, leads at £5, you're happy with that, you will be able to keep putting more money into that campaign until 30%, I would say. You get campaigns up to 40%, some are at 20%, but 30% is a good benchmark. PPC will hit a good cost per acquisition until you get over that number. So keep your budget flexible as long as the results are good, keep putting money in, and it'll eventually hit a ceiling. International targeting. So we get lots of our clients, you know, all of our clients are event organisers, they all want a big international feel to their events. But realistically, what percentage do you get from your international? So you might say, you know, you're getting 1 and 2% for certain countries. Stick to your top 5 to 10 countries when you're doing international targeting, rather than trying to cover all of the different countries, you know, for a very small number of attendees from there. So do what's going to work first of all, and then branch out from there. Think about when your event is, when's the deadline. Don't start too early. If you've got a very small budget and it's fixed, you don't want to start too early. And don't test too many platforms, too many regions, too many things for risk of spreading yourself too thin. As I mentioned before, you're better to start small, prove that it works, and then add on the top. So I'm going to take you through the top 5 event KPIs that we work to, that our clients work to, that I'm sure all of you guys work to. And if there's anything I've missed, we can catch up on that at the end. So we're going to look at visitor pre-registration for free events. We're going to look at visitor attendance. We're going to look at new data, exhibitor leads, and increasing social engagement. So visitor registration is a massive part of lots of events. You might have a conference with a free exhibition, you might have a free exhibition, you might have a conference on its own. We would say that 15 to 30% of your results can come from PPC, and that's going to depend on your budget. As I mentioned before, hitting 30%, over 30%, you need to have the budget to be able to do that. But for pre-registered visitors and conference visitors, we would expect that to come from PPC. 60% of the campaign should be driving new data. And I'll walk you through how we do that. But what we don't want to do and what you don't want to do is spend money on campaigns that are already delivering on visitors that you're already getting. You want to be able to deliver new people, new attendees to your event that haven't been there before. Or specifically for conferences, we would say as a benchmark, 200 to 400% return on investment is a benchmark. We often get over 1,000%, and we have had some crazy campaigns, 4,000, 10,000% return on investment, but it's not something that we would ever want to guarantee to clients. But 200 is an absolute minimum. And the nice thing about PPC is it's very, very easy to say, okay, what am I spending for paid events, to say, what am I spending? How much does one ticket cost for my conference? And how many people are registering? So it's very easy to get your return on investment, provided your tracking is set up correctly. So how do we hit those figures? How do you ensure that you consistently deliver those benchmarks? Often when we take over PPC from clients, they're maybe doing 2%, 5%, something like that from PPC. We want to make sure that that's maximized for you. So what you want is an integrated paid media campaign. So don't just think about search, social, video, and display. How can you get all of those channels working together to deliver a really strong cost per acquisition? A flexible budget based on results. So if your budget is small and it's fixed, start later. If it's flexible, dependent on results, start earlier. And we would be saying 12 weeks, I would say, as a minimum for a visitor campaign. If you have an expensive conference, 20 weeks, 16 weeks is good. Absolutely rock steady tracking. So we would work with clients to say, okay, Google Tag Manager's in, or help you audit that to make sure that you're going to be able to track all the way through to attendance, completed sale. Because if that's not there, you're never going to be able to figure out how well your campaign is working. Relevant messages to each of the audience sectors of the show. So you want to be able to say, okay, here's all my different audiences, and here's the message that speaks to that audience's pain point. If you can, and you've got video content, it is an excellent way to drive traffic. So at the moment, search is very expensive to do. If you can get video as part of your mix, then that's a great way to drive traffic. You would be building video views, and then we can remarket to those users. So that's a good thing to say, okay, all of these users engaged with my content, let's remarket to them to actually turn up at the event. And use responsive formats. So I'll show you some examples of those, but really what you're looking for is use the facility available to you on Google and on Facebook, stick with really strong images, and let the machine learning do its thing. Visitor attendance. So for our free events, we know that PPC can deliver up to 69% attendance, which is 30% higher than an average of 51% for free events. We know this based on our clients that are able to track all the way through from a PPC click to somebody turning up at an event. And that's really important to be able to get, how tangible this is. Search is generally going to be your highest level of attendance, and social will be lower, but it's cheaper. Again, 60% of those attendees, we would assume are brand new data. And how do we do that? So we want to be able to say, okay, for a free event, if somebody pre-registers, then we want to remarket to that person to say, are you going to book travel discount? Are you going to book a meeting? Are you going to reserve a seat for yourself at the workshop? Are you going to book a colleague? We need to give them another reason for them to click again. All of this is done through cookies, and all of this is done through Google Tag Manager. So the rule that we're saying for a conversion, a pre-registration, we take that list of cookies and we remarket to those users to say, do something else. Tell us that you're coming. Prove to us that you're coming. We want to track a secondary conversion. So book a meeting, travel, save my seat. And it's really important to have end-to-end tracking. And this isn't just for PPC. This is from email. This is from social. This is from anything, your referrals. All the way through from that first click to did they actually come to the event. And then let's talk about new data. So we want to be using content campaigns to drive new data and then remarket to them to achieve our event KPIs. And what we mean by that is all event organisers have some form of content. So it could be a white paper, it could be a survey, it could be a report, something like that. Taking that piece of content and showing that to an audience that you think is relevant to you, it's cheaper and it's easier for us to get somebody to download a white paper than it is to, get on 2 trains and attend an event in London. So we get them in with the content and then we remarket to them to attend the event. The other way to think about new data, so new data, lots of our clients are talking about email, but there's other ways that you can think about new data in terms of cookie lists. And what I mean by that is running display campaigns, running video campaigns, build cookies so you don't have necessarily their email address, but you do have that person in a cookie list. It's much cheaper for us to acquire, and then we remarket to that user. This is top of the funnel, early stage. You're thinking maybe the event's not long finished. This gets data in the bank, ready to start the campaigns for next year. How do we know that it's new data? How do we know that it's people you haven't engaged with before? For all new data campaigns, what we want to do is exclude all of your existing web traffic. So if you think about for remarketing, we would take all of your existing web traffic and we remarket to those users. So we say, you came to the website, you didn't fill in a form, you came to the website, you didn't sign up, remarket to them to push them to do that. For new data, we flip it around the other way. So we're targeting users on social, display, video, whatever. And we are excluding everyone that's been to your website on the last 180 days. We're also building a multi-layered campaign. So what we're doing is we're thinking about PPC in 2 stages. We think about it in terms of they download the content, and then the second phase is we remarket to them to get them to register or to get them to buy. When we're thinking about building traffic, so we're not thinking about registration at this stage, the number 1 metric we want to use is click-through rate, and we would also look at bounce rate, because there's no point in spending on traffic if the quality isn't there. So exhibitor leads is another thing, and I would say, if we look at all of our organizer budgets, 20% probably goes on exhibitor/sponsor lead generation. There's less of them, so we spend less money, and it's less competitive. So for our exhibitor lead, the benchmark we would generally say, and this can vary depending on the price of a stand and things like that, but let's assume a 3 times increase in cost per acquisition. So cost per acquisition for exprom, say you're talking about a £15 to £30 cost per lead. We want to then be working with you guys to say, because obviously exhibitors don't just sign up, on a website, they submit a lead, the sales team get in touch, they figure out what they need, and you might be looking at a 60-day, sales process. So what we want to understand, and what you guys want to understand if you run this yourselves, is what is the quality of the data coming in? Because you might say, this is great, we're getting exhibitor leads all over the world for £10. Are they likely to actually become an exhibitor? So what's the quality of the lead? We also establish the quality of the lead, the sales team conversion rate from lead to sale, and the value of that. And once you know those 2 things, exhibitor PPC works very well. So I would say we tend to assume around a 10% lead to sale ratio, and then we establish an average order value, and that allows us to determine the return on investment of the campaign. Across our organisers, conversion rate from lead to sale varies from 5% all the way through to 30%. And the 30% are the very niche, very specific conferences. So if you want to exhibit at that conference, it's super, super targeted, often in the medical space type conference. But 10% is about an average, we would say. So how do we hit those numbers? So we want to understand intent. When we're talking about our search campaigns, the keywords between an exhibitor search and a visitor search, as much as we would like to think they're different, aren't that different. So we want to make sure that in the early stages, we're doing exhibitor promotion, and the later stages, we're doing visitor promotion. We're understanding with the sales team what's the quality of the leads like that are coming in. Are we getting good leads from a specific sector, specific region? As I said, understand the sales team conversion rate and the average order value. But the main thing is really that we have a clear run of exprom. So once the event has finished, 2 weeks, let everyone take a breather, relax a little bit. We then want to be thinking about our exhibitor campaign. So we have a nice, clean, 16-week campaign before we start thinking about delegate promotion and visitor promotion. So enough time that you can run your exhibitor campaign, because the one thing you can't run at the same time is search. There's just no difference. And if there is difference in the keywords, Google aren't going to show them in the auction because it's just too specific. So let's talk about social engagement. So social engagement, we would say we want to allocate around 30% of our PPC budget to our social paid media, and we would expect a similar ratio of conversion. Some of our consumer brands, we might attribute a little bit more budget, but I'd say about 30% is quite a realistic benchmark for our clients. How do we hit that number for social? So again, we want to be thinking, we have so many options in social advertising. And when I talk about social, 9 times out of 10, we're using Facebook/Instagram here. We do a little bit on Twitter in the Middle East, namely Saudi, and little bits on LinkedIn, but it's much more expensive. So generally, I'm talking about Facebook, and we can get into that in the question. So we want to split the audience to match the show sectors with relevant messaging. We want to make sure that our tracking is set and our attribution is agreed at the beginning. So Facebook can look quite generous with conversion sometimes. We want to be looking at a 7-day click attribution window there. Always we're looking for conversions as a registration as opposed to a like. So generally for exhibitions or for conferences, we're talking about a sale, a lead, a registration. We're not too fussed about likes or comments or things like that. If we find that we're getting a better or worse result on social, we would move money around the other platforms if we can get better results. And that's the nice thing with PPC, is it's really easy to track. It's really easy to see, what's working and what's not. If Facebook isn't working and Google is, we take the money from there and put it into Google. So I've got a case study here that will take you through for a conference we recently worked on, and then I've just got a few more points on strategy. So global conference brand, we had to deliver delegate sales. So we ran a lead generation campaign and then a sales campaign over 6 months. We did search, we did retargeting, display, video, social, and we split by show sector, and we looked at key speakers as well. If key speakers are in your sector and they're kind of famous within your space, then use them as targeting. We implemented thousands of ads, keywords, and audiences. And we ended up with over 27 million impressions, 252,000 clicks. We got 1,149 delegate conversions with £32 cost per acquisition, and that campaign generated over €2 million. So ROI was 4,000%. That's really good, but as I said, it's really not common to get over 1,000% for. It is common to get over 1,000% for conferences. So let's talk about delivering conversions. How do we hit those big kind of numbers, which is what everybody really wants? Channel mix. So the channels that we're thinking about and the strategy that we're thinking about. Initially, we're starting out with our goals and how do we measure those. We're then going to research our keywords, website, remarketing. We're looking at the landing page. So there's no point spending all of this money to bring users to your website or your landing page if it's not converting very well. So we would say change this, move this button here, this isn't great on mobile, all the things that can help improve conversion rate. We've got a really specific campaign structure for events that I'll take you through. Strategy, define your remarketing list, always have A/B testing running, and then be prepared to optimize and iterate. So the channel mix generally that you're working across on search, we've got Google, Bing, Yahoo, Naver, Baidu, Yandex. Display, you're doing Google Display Network, you might be doing Google 360 for programmatic. Social, we've got Facebook, Zing, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, WeChat. YouTube, generally for video, and then remarketing, again, all the display network. Typically, we end up doing Google, Bing, and Facebook, depending on some international requirements, but generally that's where you get the best results. So thinking about all of those different channels, and what does it generally funnel down to? When you're thinking about what's a successful campaign, what's the size of your universe, what budget do you need? And I've worked this out with a $20,000 budget. This can be applied on any budget. So I'd say the minimum you want to start with is about £1,000, dollars, euros. But you would be doing less channels. So I want to show you is what does that look like across all the different channels and platforms. So we've got a $20,000 budget to start off with. Visitor registration, and I'm talking about free registration here. 10,000 we would put onto Google, so 50% on Google, 10% on Bing, 20% on Facebook, and 10% on LinkedIn. We'd be aiming for a cost per acquisition of $6 on Google, $3 on Bing, $5 on Facebook, and $10 on LinkedIn, which is typically more expensive. Bing is a lot cheaper, but we don't always get the volume on Bing. So you would see at that $20,000 budget, we get 3,332 conversions and overall $6 CPA. And it's really important because you might say, I'm happier to pay the higher cost per acquisition on LinkedIn because, I think I'm going to get people from South Korea, or I'm going to get C-suite executives, or whatever it is that you're looking for that you're not getting on the other channels. Provided that $6 CPA is your average, then you might be happy to pay that higher premium there. Campaign structure for events. So to give an example of a brand that we work on, this is how we would tend to split a campaign. And the most important thing is to split the campaign in a way that it's very easy to see what's working and what's not. So on search, we would be thinking about our brand terms, and I'll go through brand terms in the question, but anything that's using your brand. And you would want to bid on your own brand to take up space in the search engine results page, to stop your competitors doing it, and you get a very low cost per conversion on it. So brand, our client is Licensing Expo in Vegas, is Licensing Expo is the brand term. Bottom of the funnel is we're thinking about, okay, what kind of event are you? So there's our licensing event, you might be construction, you might be finance. So bottom of the funnel would be licensing event, licensing summit, licensing conference, licensing symposium, whatever word people are looking for. They're not looking for the brand necessarily, but they're looking for an event type keyword. So they're in decision-making mode, they're looking for an event, but they don't know which one they're going to go to yet. So we're saying come to Licensing Expo. Middle of the funnel keywords would be people who are looking at maybe license a product. And they're, again, looking for content, looking for answers, but they're not necessarily ready to go to an event. So we might show them a piece of content, all about how do you license a product, and then eventually remarket them to come to an event. And top of the funnel in search would be something like licensing. We would rarely use licensing as a keyword because that could be drinks licensing, could be driving, and it would be too broad. But just to let you see that in context. For social, we would split by show audiences. So we would split by retailers, manufacturers, brands, and what are the pain points for each of those audiences. For display, again, we would replicate the same targeting. We would also look at keywords, and we'd also look at competitors. And then for remarketing, we're going to look at, okay, if people have visited a fashion licensing page, let's show them an ad all about fashion licensing. All of these things together, we would say, okay, we're going to end up at a cost per conversion of $6 or $8, And we might be paying more on display or LinkedIn, but overall we're reaching a new audience in lots of different ways, and the overall cost per acquisition, we're happy with that. So I'll just finish off with some final tips, and then we'll take your questions. So know your target number in terms of results. So I know a few of you said at the beginning you weren't sure what your cost per acquisition should be. And that's really common. Lots of people don't know what that is, but have an idea and say, okay, you know, I need to get 10,000 people to my event, and 2,000 of those should come from PPC, you know, as a very broad benchmark. Set a budget. So if you're saying, okay, I want to get 20% of my attendees through PPC, it makes sense to make that 20% of the budget. Visitor and ticket sales live at least 12 weeks out from the event, even earlier if people need to book travel, if they need to get visas. Keep a high budget for the last few weeks, so don't be tempted to spend too early. Keep your money for the end. Don't spread yourself too thin on various platforms. Have a target CPA in mind, and we can help you, Ricardo and I, on, you know, what should that be for your industry. Test where possible, so responsive ads, copy, content, all of these things are really important. And be ready to change and adapt based on your results. So that's me. I'll let Ricardo take over. And yeah, we will answer your questions in just a sec. We're happy to assess and review any current PPC that you have. There's no cost to that, totally risk-free. We'll give you an audit there. And then we can give you a proof of concept campaign. So hypothetically, if you say we have £3,000 and we want to get this amount of people to our event, we can say, yep, that'll work, that'll not work, or here's what else we can try. So we're really happy to pick up the conversation after. And yeah, if you want to fill in the poll and say you would like to receive a free PPC assessment, then we can help you get that set up, and it's absolutely no obligation.
Okay, well, Laura, fantastic. I think that's kind of very, very, very useful. I think I wanted to kind of summarize a little bit of to me, what I think the key aspects of this session, where one of the things is that for me, for I can kind of speak to a lot of marketers out there. I think it's important. PPC is important if you want to build numbers internationally with an international audience, and it's a very good way to optimize your budget. I think it's very important as well that you use, if you're using PPC, to drive exhibitor leads, because that works both for exhibitors, for sponsors, and also conferences, exhibitions, and everything, and is a very good way and quick win for you to start driving high return on investment. Obviously, a conference delegate place is going to cost between £1,000 to £2,000. If you get an exhibitor deal, that's going to be probably anything in the region of 3,000 upwards. So as a marketeer, you really want to put your eggs where you're going to get the highest amount of return. Potentially, you can then give that back and to help you with your event. That is if you are obviously a little bit tight with your budget. I think there's something that I totally agree with Laura, which is, we're not fussed about likes, conversations. Forget about that stuff. We're in the business of making money, and marketeers should be in the business of making money. Social media is about driving results, and I would totally agree with that. And finally, very, very, very important, and I think a lot of people, a lot of marketers ignore this or actually don't know, and the choose of keywords for your brand, for the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel is extremely, extremely important. And do not rely on your PPC agency to solely provide that information from you. Feel free to question your PPC agency on that matter, because ultimately, and this is not anything to do with the agencies and why, but it's just because you know your product better. So and match the offers and the leads, match the offers and the results that you're measuring against that. So if you're having a top of the funnel keyword, do not attempt to sell an event to them. Just try to attempt to generate a lead. Try to generate just to generate the contact. If it's a middle of the funnel offer, keyword, then try to look at what offer might be around the middle of the funnel. For instance, an event brochure. Now, and finally, I think is extremely important, and this is kind of where the other elements we need to be taken into account. What happens after you generate those leads? And this is where automation, this is where content marketing comes to play. And this is kind of how Laura and I work together, helping clients in that matter. You might have a PPC campaign, and I think Lupcho was kind of alluding to how do you generate or how do you derive a return on investment of 1,000%? That's kind of how you actually drive that, because in essence, you're going to generate the lead. And what we're saying is, don't worry about the clicks. I almost always advise my customers and the clients that I work with to invest their budget in top of the funnel and middle of the funnel. Why? Because you're investing a lot of money on PPC and to try to get them to pay for a conference place. However, if you try to aim to generate the lead, you're going to be able to email that lead whatever number of times you decide. That lead is going to be good for you for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 events in the future. That is assuming that you're sending them relevant content and not spamming. But obviously, every people attending this session do not spam, right? Marketers in event do not spam, right? That's kind of where I put the happy face. So, guys, let's go through the question panels. And then I think I wanted to put something that's kind of came up very, very importantly. Laura, there was a question around, there's actually various companies attending. One is in the drugs and life sciences environment, and they're saying that they get banned all the time because obviously they think that that's kind of happening. There's another company, again, Helen, they use blockchain and cryptocurrency. So Google keeps on saying, invest money, but then no, we don't really want you to do that. And I think there was kind of another one, another question around that, which the issue is loans and financial data. Again, Facebook thinks that it's phishing. What's your response to that?
Yeah, those are really good questions, and it's something that we come up against with our clients as well. So we run lots of pharmaceutical events, we run medical technology, we run drug delivery events, we also run blockchain events in the Middle East, which were one was a launch event. The answers to the question there are, you might get banned initially. So what will happen is Google would disapprove the ad. And we're lucky that we have an account manager. So sometimes when you're going directly to Facebook or Google, it's a bit of an automated box, response that you get. But we go through our account manager and we say, look, we're not trying to actually sell drugs online. We're trying to encourage people to come to a conference about drug delivery in Boston or something. And it goes through a manual approval, and then it will be approved. It might be limited in approval, so it might, only go to over 18s, which is fine because none of us are really targeting kids anyway. So yeah, I would say drugs and life sciences, anybody that has an event, then it's fine. You just have to go through that process. If you're not getting anywhere with Google, definitely give us a shout and we can help you with that. You just keep at it with support, because if you're doing an event, it's definitely allowed, but the bots will pick it up initially. On blockchain, that was a real challenge, especially on Facebook. And last year, we couldn't run any cryptocurrency events on Facebook. They have changed it again this year. So again, it's just going through a manual process. There was two of the guys on our team went through a lot of manual review with Facebook, but eventually we've got it approved. That's not to say that they won't pull it back, but yeah, it's just a manual process with the account managers usually.
Great stuff. Now, a lot of questions, so thank you guys. So let me just kind of look at what one of the aspects. Here, you've mentioned about an event that's generated about 2 million euros in delegate attendance, right? I guess that's probably a nirvana state for many of us. And I'm just kind of interested to more about the cost per acquisition. What would be the cost per acquisition for a business or an event that is aiming to generate 200 delegates and increase it to 250 or 500 and increase it? What would you say is a benchmark cost per acquisition when you're trying to sell delegate tickets?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, obviously everybody would like to, spend 60,000 and get back 2 million. For that specific client, they're in financial technology. We run 4 events. They're very well established clients. And yeah, they work on a cost per acquisition of about £30 for a delegate sale, which is around €3,000. Out with that, we run lots of other conferences, much smaller budgets, but still with similar returns, over 1,000%. What you're looking for, the cost per acquisition, I would say, is based on more what is your average order price. So if you say, you know, I've got a $3,000 ticket, you're looking at maybe 10% of that as your cost per acquisition as a maximum. It can be much lower than that, and that depends on a few different things. It depends on how well established is the event, what locations are you trying to get people to the event, and where in the funnel are you targeting. So say you're kind of new to PPC as a conference, you know, set yourself a benchmark of £30 to £50 cost per acquisition for a delegate. Work in the bottom of the funnel, so do search, do retargeting, do social, and think about what's the average order value. So if you're trying to sell, you know, a £3,000 ticket, you're not going to get people registered for, you know, £5, £10 the same way we would on free events. So think about your average order price, and yeah, I don't know, we get a lot around £30 to £50 for delegate sales.
I think that's actually a very good benchmark. And I know, Paul, that and various of you guys are asking questions about what is the average cost per click to begin with. But my suggestion would be, don't think about the cost per click, because you'll go crazy. Think about, again, as Laura's mentioned, think about having a test budget, which I think is about £1,000, £2,000 as a test budget. Then you will define what is your cost per acquisition, because it's more important for you to know what is the cost per acquisition, because the cost per acquisition essentially is measuring once you've done the results. If you focus too much on what is the cost per click, it's not going to tell you anything, really. What you really need to be aware, if you know that your cost per acquisition is 50, then you will be absolutely happy to pay £20 per click, so to speak, or that sort of stuff. But my suggestion, and I think probably Laura would agree with me, she's not in here, but it's more focus on the cost per acquisition, and focus on measuring that, and focus on, honestly, put a lot of effort before you even begin your campaign. This is one key tip that we've encountered ourselves with many people that we work with. By the time you get the images, by the time you create the landing pages, by the time, it could be about 2 weeks or a month, right? So start working with that in advance, and understand how that's going to be working. So, do you have anything to say there, Laura?
Yeah, so exactly. I think cost per click varies massively. So if you are doing something, say, in insurance and financial services, you know, you can be looking at £8, £9, £10 a click. So what we would say is, let's take search, let's take remarketing, let's take social, let's take all the stuff, and you'll say, okay, for my conference, I can't pay over $50 cost per conversion, and we take all the bits and then we work it out from there. So there's really cheap cost per click we can go after, and there's really expensive cost per click we can go after. But ultimately, as long as we're all happy with the cost per acquisition, then I think that's probably the best place to work from, which we would tell you what we think that would be at the beginning, which obviously does come from the cost per click. But yeah, don't get too hung up on that because it fluctuates so much.
Good. And I think there's one question from someone that has expressed that so Facebook has plummeted in engagement levels in the B2B space. LinkedIn is more expensive, but it can still deliver. I know that this is a very, very contentious area, and I'll be very, very keen to hear your thoughts, Laura. I personally think that Facebook still provides a much better opportunity for you to engage. I'm not dismissing LinkedIn, but that's my general opinion. But let's see, Laura, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And yeah, what I would say is I think that's true. Engagement level has dropped, but the caveat being through paid media, that will be seen more. Also, when we talk about Facebook advertising, I'm including Instagram advertising, which has grown exponentially in there. So I would still say, even if, you know, engagement has dropped, you know, there's 2 billion people, And even if they're not interacting directly on the Facebook platform, everybody is touched in their web behaviours through a Facebook pixel, so it will be picked up in remarketing on a different site in the audience network. There's lots of other ways that we're not just relying, on CEOs sitting scrolling Facebook, which doesn't happen so often. Good question about LinkedIn as well. I still think LinkedIn, the ad platform isn't there. The ad technology is much, much better on Facebook. Cost per conversion is 5-10 times the price on LinkedIn. Cost per click is 5-10 times the price. Things like sponsored emails are charged on a cost per send, not even a cost per click. So the whole thing gets really expensive really quickly. If you're new to PPC, we generally don't recommend clients start with LinkedIn. There's a couple of exceptions in the Middle East, but generally I would say start with Facebook, start with Google, start with Bing, prove the results there, and then we maybe say, okay, you understand how it all works. Let's try £500 on LinkedIn, £1,000 on LinkedIn. The other exceptions, if you have some very good custom data, that can work quite well on LinkedIn, but in terms of pure cost per acquisition, it tends to be Facebook that performs better.
Ella, I think you had that question around that. How long should we allow our campaigns to run before we start moving budget? And I think Laura's just answered that. Was that fair? Yeah. Did you just answer that roughly or not?
I would say just for running the campaign, give it initially, say, some of our clients will launch something straight away and then they want to refresh everything. Let something run for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, let the machines do their thing. And then, I don't know, with events, you need a few weeks for it to start, for cost per acquisition to start to come down. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 5-6 weeks before we start to actually adjust the media plan, unless, we've spent like £300-400 on Facebook and we've got 0 conversions. It's quite obvious. But yeah, I would say just don't pull out too soon, because I think then it can, you might lose on conversions. Because if you think about it, your first conversion, say you've spent £100, is going to cost you £100, too expensive. Your second conversion costs you £50. So just realise that the CPA comes down. But yeah, 5-6 weeks before we start moving money around in an event campaign.
Okay, well, just so many questions. It's interesting here. We've got 5 more minutes, but now this is one from someone that currently does not use PPC. So how would you recommend us to start using PPC to drive leads for both delegate acquisitions and specs with a limited budget? And I guess, Gaurav, limited budget is very subjective. So I am going to assume that a limited budget is, or I'll actually making a statement that if you have less, if you have less than £1,000 that you're going to use as a test, then there's no point you running a test. So I guess now over to you, Laura. What would be that? I guess that benchmark. What would be the recommendation there?
Yeah, so like how lots of our clients start out, they're maybe fairly traditional conference organisers. They've never done PPC before, and they say, okay, let's give this thing a go. And yeah, I would agree with Ricardo. Without anything less than £1,000, you don't have enough runway for the campaign to actually go. So starting somewhere between £1,000 and £2,000 at the very beginning. And if you say, look, my boss has given us £1,000 to test this thing out, it's totally fixed, then maybe run that for the last, 6 weeks of the campaign or something, because if you imagine PPC runs on a daily budget based on the number of clicks. So if we're like 16 weeks out, we could be on £5 a day, which is about 2 clicks, doesn't make any sense. So if the budget's small and fixed, let's start later. Proof of concept, yeah, £1,000, £2,000, but we would be very realistic what we can achieve in that. And I would say if we hit the numbers that we say we're going to hit, or you get the numbers in, then be prepared to put more money into it. And it's much easier to put more money in once you say, we've got 10% extra delegate sales from here. So yeah, keep it flexible. Do the stuff that's going to work. So do search, do retargeting. If you only have £1,000, probably just do Google, and then build out from there once you're confident that the numbers are coming in. So yeah, no budget too small. Just be realistic about time frame and what you can get back, and be prepared to be flexible.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the final question, and then we wrap up for the day. We're respectful of your time. So, it's a two-stage question. So, which trends across the platforms? Like, is there anything that you see with best day of the week, best time day to post, or is obviously to look at potential delegates? And the last one, what is your favorite platform for best results?
Yeah, that's good. And yeah, trends vary a little bit brand to brand. So, quite typically consumer brands, we see uplift, from like Thursday to Sunday, like we do lots of consumer shows. We see maybe up to 70% on mobile. Saudi, we're almost 100% on mobile. B2B tends to be 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. kind of Monday to Friday. We're aware of, the weekend in Middle East, for instance. We're aware of different time zones. We work on events in 42 different countries, and we still often come back to Google, Bing, and Facebook/Instagram with YouTube in there. My favourite platform, it's good. I love them all equally, but yeah, I think Google. I think it's got to be Google. They were the first in that space. The technology just gets better every single year. There's always something new that our team are telling us about it. And I think, often if our clients are only going to do one thing, we would say do search, because that's where the intent is. So yeah, I think, best times of day to post. We don't tend to do organic content, so I don't think I can answer that very well. But yeah, B2B, we stick to the operating hours. B2C, we focus on mobile. And one of the kind of key takeaways I would say is invest in Instagram stories right now. It's massively underpriced media. Everyone's engaging with it. It's one of the fastest growing formats on media. So if you're doing it organically or paid, I would guess you'll get some pretty strong results from there. But yeah, hopefully that's answered your question.
I think on the final note is the stories are undercooked at the moment by many event organizers, specifically because the stories would allow you to use video, would allow you to engage in really, really interesting ways. We, as a business, are investigating and doing a lot of research around the use of video, but not the usual video that you do at events, but video with interviews, with thought-leading content, with all these really cool and interesting things, which unfortunately we have now run out of time. So it will be a good opportunity to continue the conversation. By all means, you've got Laura's details there. When we send the follow-up email, we're going to send Laura's contact details. You have my contact details, and then I'm sure I'm connected with pretty much most of you already. Remember, we're very happy. It is a free offer to all of you. We like to get people getting good results with PPC. So if you want to have an assessment of what you're doing or what you're not doing, if you're not doing it yet, give us an opportunity to have a quick chat with you, explain how it works, and develop a proof of concept campaign. The most important thing that I would just actually suggest to anyone is the beauty of digital is that it's going to allow you to demonstrate how much it's costing you to acquire a delegate, right? If you know this figure, which is very easy through a proof of concept campaign, then it's a matter of mathematics. You can just then decide how much you want to put into it, because you know almost exactly how much is that going to cost you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Laura, thank you very much. That's amazing. And until next time, thank you very much.